Welcome to Mind Your Business. Ron Newton here with Newton Services Foundation and also working with our team at Intelligent Ashler Staffing. We've got a special gentleman here in the pit today, and he is one of my special people, one of the people that are dear to my heart. He's on our team. He works both on the nonprofit and for-profit. And I've asked Gary today to, just tell us a little bit about your story. Just go into your story and tell your story of where you come from and how you avoided the pit. That's all about today, avoiding the pit for today's children, tomorrow's man, tomorrow's father. And I thought it was a special time.
Well, Ron, thank you for having me today and inviting me onto this podcast. My story is, where do I begin? Raised by a single mother. My father was in the streets, drugs, 30 years. My mother was married at 16, had me at 17. Then my brothers followed at 19 and 21. And so there was a lot of moving. Went from home to homes.
How do you deal with that?
Focus. Yeah. My mother was very on us about being diligent in school, being diligent in our faith in church and God, and just being focused. So not only were we moving from home to home, we were going from school to school as well.
Okay.
And so neighborhood to neighborhood. I come up in the 80s and late 90s, and so it was a lot of gang members and things like that. So a lot of those challenges, and it was definitely interesting.
Well, I'll just kind of ask you a few questions on that journey. I mean, you're a young man, maybe even a boy, mm-hmm. and you're moving in and out of neighborhoods, and there's a different element for every neighborhood, right?
Yes, it is.
Then you add the school part of it. That's mm-hmm. a whole nother element mm-hmm. of change.
Yes,
do you
sir.
get accepted, and do you want to be accepted in that group?
That's right.
Because maybe that group's trouble, right?
That's right.
And pick me up when you're like a teenager. What's that look like? Did you ever get in trouble, or was there a path that you were picking and it went sideways on you at any given time? I mean, tell me that part when you're 13, 14 years old, when we're trying to navigate. We kind of think we're a man, starting to be a man.
Oh, yeah.
But yet we don't really know anything.
Yes.
You got this mom that's very disciplinary, driven, because
mm-hmm.
she loves you, mm-hmm. right?
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that.
So as a teenager, of course, you're faced with the same temptations to hang out with the boys. They're smoking weed, they're selling drugs. My mother, I was more afraid of my mother than I was the police. So I respected my mother. Anytime the church van rolled up, she was like, get on the church van. And I would always have to tell the guys, I'll see you guys when I get back. And so I used to hang out with my friends, but I knew of something different about me. Even though I was in those type of environments, I didn't get caught up in that environment. I didn't let that be an excuse to be in the streets, to smoke weed, to drink alcohol, to sell drugs. And it was all because of my mother's upbringing.
That's fantastic. I mean, and it's one of the things that I've always admired about you since I've met you is I knew you were grounded. And you don't know, was that something you saw a lot of bad things around you?
Absolutely.
Was that a mom? Was that the combination? Right?
It was a combination.
For me, I've got some wonderful family members, and I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but I had good people around me, but good people always don't do good things. So I kind of relate in some areas that I had people around me, and I've kind of told a little of my story in the past of being an athlete, growing up in Montrose.
Yes.
There was these coaches that would just grab a hold of you and be like, "Look, son, if you want to play football here, we're not going to have those mistakes. And we're not going to get involved with those groups."
So I actually didn't have that. My uncles, I didn't have uncles. I didn't have people I looked up to. It was just something internal. So I guess you could say it was the complete opposite. I saw people, how they lived their lives. And internally, I knew I didn't want to be that individual when I grew up.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going, from my father, I purposefully lived my life to be completely opposite from what I witnessed with him.
And I think I think something has to motivate you inside. Something has to be a deeper passion. And maybe just because your mom was diligent in making sure God was in your heart.
That's right. That's right.
I think that's a huge component. The earlier that happens, the longer he can stay and preside.
Absolutely.
And you can live purposely. But on the same token, there's all these temptations, right? I grew up Lutheran and really not in a Christian home. Just, you know, we went to church to be the religious family.
Sure.
But my mom was doing the best job she could. And it's very interesting the dynamics that I hear today and, you know, what I experienced. My mom was more free. Like, I could have been a mess.
Wow.
Because my mom didn't have a curfew on me.
Okay.
She didn't put, I didn't have a church van picking me up. I can tell you that. Like with my uncle smoking a joint.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And so I look at your dynamic and I go, man, that's pretty cool. Like you didn't have to get into that element.
Yes.
Because at some point I had to decide which one was going to pay off, right? And if those coaches wouldn't have been there. And I guess why I'm telling my story a little bit along with yours is
Sure.
you have to either make a constitutional decision yourself or you got to have somebody come beside you. So moms out there, if you're listening, if you're an HR director or you're a business owner and you think you're being too hard on your boy because you want to be friends.
I promise you're not.
You're not.
You're not.
This man is telling us today it all works. And I remember telling my girls, look, we can be friends later. We ain't going to be friends right now.
That's right.
I have a role to play. I didn't have a dad. My dad died when I was 3. And I just remember saying to them, look, we can hang out someday.
That's right.
But right now,
I'm your
bust
dad.
your butt.
That's right.
And I remember that not being very popular in my home.
That's right. That's right.
And, you know, they both turned out pretty good because of that. But, you know, I think the more we have a Christian base or a faith involved in our life, the less, even if you don't totally get into the whole Bible thing, let's say you,
That's right.
let's assume you don't really get it and
Sure.
it doesn't make sense to you. If you live by the principles,
That's right.
it's a lot safer life.
It's a lot safer just having morals, having a foundation.
Yeah.
Because the pit is there.
It's right around the corner at all times.
And sometimes you tippy toe up close to the pit,
Sure.
you know. And for me, I saw the pit, and I had countless friends that I grew up with that fell into it, and they were strung out on drugs, got in trouble with the law, and for that, I thank my mother even to this day. I had a conversation with her this morning, told her that I was going to be recording this podcast, and I just told her thank you, because if it wasn't for her, I know I would have been in the pit for sure.
Yeah, and it's hard once you get in the pit. So if you're listening or somebody's sharing this with a teenage boy or even younger than a teenage boy or girl, you know, I think you got to stress upon once you get in trouble, it's really hard to get out.
Yes, sir.
It's like anything. If you get in financial trouble, it takes a long time to get yourself out of that pit. If you get in trouble with the law, it takes a long time. I allowed my temper to take the best of me for a long time.
Wow.
And it's a pit that's very hard because no one stopped it. My mom didn't stop the tantrums. My coaches didn't stop because they used it for their advantage. You know, so it took me into my adulthood of, you know, having a brush with that other side that you don't like to see.
Sure.
Because I knew I was pretty tough and I knew that I could get away with most things.
That's right.
Because I was conditioned over time. But some kids don't have that blessing. They don't have that luck. You know, you get in a fight and somebody dies or somebody gets shot or there's drugs involved. That's a pit that you may never return from in civilization as we want to say life. You may be a great person, but what if you're locked up for the rest of your life? That's called the real pit, right?
Absolutely.
A life of drugs or a life of criminal activity that lands you somewhere that you don't want to be. I know we're getting deep here today, but I want to mix it up. You know, we said we'd bring resources to these podcasts. We said that we would bring people along in these podcasts that would be impactful to lives. And that doesn't just always mean jobs. What this podcast to me represents is making some good decisions, being surrounded by good people that you don't get into the pit so you can go to a company like us and get a job and had a hand up, not a hand out, right?
Yes, and a great example of that was earlier today. I was heading here actually. One of our employees, he came to me to shake my hand to say his record was expunged. He had formerly been in prison. And the only reason he came to the office was to show me the paper showing that his record had been expunged. He was almost in tears, wanted to just say, now I'm going to have some doors open for me. And he said, thank you. And so that's why I'm excited about working with Newton Services Foundation and also Intelligent Ashler Staffing, because of moments like that.
Yeah, sometimes it's that one person, you know, because somebody said not too long ago to me, well, do you think you can change the world? And I said, we're going to do it one person at a time.
One person at a time.
One person. Because if you talk to a group or somebody sees this podcast or somebody sees one of our other podcasts and it stimulates a thought of, Who do I go talk to? Well, maybe it's just you. Maybe it's you in the office. I hear you interviewing people all the time, and you're just having real basic conversations.
I love it.
Sometimes I'm thinking, wow, he's pretty deep into that guy in an interview.
Love it.
But you are trying to teach something that was taught to you a long time ago.
That's right.
You lived in those neighborhoods. You lived in those marketplaces, but you didn't give in to those temptations.
That's right.
I give you a lot of credit for that.
Well, thank you.
You know, and obviously you're passing on to your children. What do you tell your children? I mean, they're in a different era than you and I were.
I tell
How
them
old are
just
you?
that. It's like, so their generation, they have similar temptations, but they don't have the exposure to like the neighborhoods like we come up from. I guess you can almost say my kids, for lack of better words, have had like a silver spoon because they haven't had those challenges. They've had both parents in the home, but I tell them that those temptations are real and it can end you in a lot of trouble that you may not recover from. And I tell them, you know, with our employees that come to our office on a daily basis, some of their stories. So I share with them their stories, hoping that it'll motivate them to say, look at your mom, look at your dad, and look where we come from, and you too can be successful.
Yeah, it's a cool testimony, and you know, and just for the plug the business side, you know, our business, you know, we place people with disabilities, we place people with cognitive and physical, we place people that are young, old. We're a full staffing agency, but this nonprofit thing was born out of a thought that if we could help enough people and drive enough revenue through some of the government programs, we could start a youth program that's not government backed, that we would have enough revenue, enough donations that we could get to the youth early enough that they don't have to make those mistakes.
Yes, that's awesome.
That they get the help that your sons have had.
Yes.
And people like Gary will be involved in that nonprofit and some of that motivation. Because sometimes as parents, you know, we can't have that dominion over that because it's their mom and dad, right? They need
That's
other
right.
mentors. And for me, it was those coaches. You know, I got
Absolutely.
the hard work from my grandfather and my uncles. I got the
Awesome.
moral character from being around the right people as coaches. So no matter what it is, I think we can help in our marketplace. And that's why
Absolutely.
we're so desirable about what this foundation is doing.
That's why I'm excited. I'm
And
excited.
The for-profit side plays a part in that because, you know, the worst thing to do is be able to connect with the community and find people, help them,
Yes,
and then can't find them a job,
absolutely.
right?
Yes.
So we're going to do both. We're going to help people and we're going to find them a job. So, you know, the whole mind your business, it's not an arrogant statement. It's mind your business, meaning we want to teach you how to mind your business. We want to help you through finances. We want to help you through getting connected to the right resources. That's why we bring on people that are, you know, I have one gentleman's 3 tours of war. I have another person that was a professional athlete overseas. You know, we have people that are raising families. Those are the things that you want to surround yourself with because what you're telling your children, a lot of the people coming through our door are not being told.
That's right.
Right?
That's correct.
Because people are busy. Two people in the house, if there is, they have jobs. If there's one parent in the house, obviously that's a different dynamic. And I remember by the time I was like 14 years old, I was helping my mom pay the bills.
Wow.
Not, you know, not because the money, but physically sitting down and saying, "Hey, Mom, we need to get the mortgage paid. We need to do this."
Yes.
And that was, like you said in the beginning, it was just natural for me of being able to figure that out, right? But the main reason is I want the bill collectors to stop.
That's
calling.
right. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
you know, that's a dynamic that I think, you know, we can all play a part and be a resource to this community and the community surrounding us. I want to ask a couple more questions. What do you tell the people that aren't your kids? Like they're teenagers and, you know, you're actively involved in your church.
I am.
How do you tell a kid he's got access to, unfortunately, all kinds of websites that aren't productive to a young male's brain?
Sure.
There's porn, there's all kinds of crazy stuff out there that I'm probably not even aware of.
Sure.
But these phones and the Facebook and the Instagram and the Snapchat, what do you tell a kid? You know, how do you get to a kid and be consistent enough that they'll actually might start to hear it?
Sure. I just try to continue to share my story. I don't know if I've ever shared my wife's story with you, and just be transparent. Tell to these teenagers where they are, because I teach the teenagers at my church, and to tell them that life outside of your parents' home is very real, and the world will chew you up and spit you out, won't care anything about you. But you can make a decision today that will change your life forever in a positive way.
Absolutely.
And to be separate and not worry about being accepted by your friends and your peers. And that's tough. It's tough as a teenager to go against the grain. I was dressed like this in high school. So, I was popular, but I didn't hang out with the popular crowd, if that makes sense. I played sports like you. I was in a part of the marching band, but I didn't want to be associated with people that weren't living positively. And so I know people have come back to me now as adults and say, man, if I would have just hung out with you back then in high school.
That's awesome. That's fantastic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that's a takeaway, the way you dress, the things you can control,
That's
can
right.
control, right?
That's right.
My mom used to say, make your bed every day, because that's the
Yes.
one thing we can control in the world.
Yes.
And it's the behaviors, it's
Mm-hmm.
taking care of your body, it's taking care of your nutrition. And I think those are the things, for the most part, we can control.
Practicing good habits.
Yep. Best practices, good habits. I want to encourage you, if you're an audience today and if you're watching or listening, that you would continue to watch us, because we're going to bring more resources. We've got a couple classes we're going to start. Luke Lloyd's got a youth program that we're going to launch here pretty soon. Some very impactful information coming soon. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Again, we told you we'd bring you real things, and this is Avoiding the Pit. And, we're really excited about some of the feedback that we could get from you. We want feedback. Tell us what you want to hear. Tell us some of those things that you need help in your business with, but also what we can do to be an impact in your life or maybe one of your family members' lives. And we want to thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Information.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic day.